Okay, 6C. For a certain value of the constant k, so now a different value of k, the graph of f has a point of inflection on the x-axis. You have to read that really slow. There are several clues right there. So k is different. F has a point of inflection. There's a fact that says that f has inflection point at some x coordinate. Then f double prime of that x coordinate will equal 0. The opposite is not necessarily true. Just because the second derivative is equal to 0 does not mean that f will have an inflection point. But this is true. So I go back to part A, and I get my f double prime. So f double prime turned out to be this thing, negative k over 4x to the negative 3 halves. So f double prime was negative k over 4. Oops. X to the negative 3 halves. Plus x to the negative 2. And that's going to have to equal 0. Inflection point on the x-axis. So I've got to figure out the value of k that makes this happen. So by getting this far, by just recognizing that for some x, f double prime has to equal 0, I do get 1 point. Honestly, this is a place where I start to feel like I'm stalling, like I'm a little puzzled because I have two unknowns here. And I'm like, how do I solve for k if I don't even know what x is? I wouldn't sit and think about this. I would immediately move on to some other problem. Now, this is the last of the FRQs, but I may have skipped others. I would go back and try and work on those for a minute to see if I can get a clue. Okay, so this problem is another good chance to remind you that you're not trying to get all the points, just as many as you can. I would have been stuck. I could not think of how to proceed. Only by, of course, looking at the answer did I finally figure it out. The point of inflection is on the x-axis. So you know this to be true, but you also know that f of x has to equal 0 because the point is on the x-axis. So this gives you an equation that looks like this, k root x minus natural log of x. This also has to equal 0. So now you have two equations with two unknowns, so we can do some rearranging to figure it out. This one's probably quicker, so let's bring the ln over. So now I know that ln of x divided by root x is the same thing as k. So that means I can substitute this into this equation for the k and try and solve for x. So negative exponents here don't help me much, so I'm going to change that. So negative k, oh wait a minute, so negative k, so negative natural log of x, all over root x, all over 4, multiplied by 1 all over x to the positive 3 halves, plus 1 over x squared has to equal 0. This is 4 over 1, so when you invert and multiply, you're going to get negative natural log of x all over 4 times root x times 1 all over x to the 3/2 plus 1 all over x squared must equal 0. This is x to the 1/2. When these two multiply, the exponents add. 1/2 plus 3/2 is 2. So this is negative natural log of x all over 4x squared plus 1 all over x squared has to equal 0. This is again a really good example of why I keep saying you don't try to get all the points on the AP test, just as many as you can. I've gotten 1 point so far. I'm trying to get the next 2. They are difficult. They would give me 1 point for getting this far, so now I'm just trying to get the very last point. I'm trying to solve for x in this case, so I can multiply both sides by x squared, which means the x squared will distribute and these will divide out. X squared times 0 is going to be 0. So I'm going to get negative natural log of x is equal to 1. That means the natural log of x is equal to negative 1. Now I have to remember my natural log stuff, which says that means x is equal to e to the negative 1 power. Or in other words, x is equal to 1 over e. Well, I'm going to finish this video as is to illustrate how hard this problem was, even for me. Right here, I multiplied both sides by x squared, but I forgot the 4 would still be there. So there's a 4 right here, which means when I multiply this over, this is negative 4. Except that, wow, that's rough. Let's back up again. So, this is why I keep saying you're not trying to get all the points. I don't think I would ever get every single point on any FRQ or even any AP test. If I multiply both sides by both sides by x squared, the x squared will multiply out. Then I'll have negative ln of x over 4 plus 1 is equal to 0. If I move this to that side, I'm going to have 1 is equal to natural log of x over 4. Multiply both sides by 4, I get this. So now I know that x is equal to e to the 4th because the natural log of e to the 4th would equal 4. So finally, I'm supposed to be finding k. So I use this, and I write k equals natural log of x, which is e to the 4th, divided by root x, so the square root of e to the 4th. This would be 4 all over the root of e to the 4th. You can leave it like that, they'll give you full credit. You happen to remember that the square root of e to the 4th is e squared. You can write that. All of that work was for one final point. It's a really good example of where you don't want to get stuck. As soon as you're stuck, just go do something else. If you don't get all the points, you'll be fine. So